It is a disease that many may not know about. May is Huntington's Disease Awareness Month.
Today we want to talk more about it, learn more about it with our 9 News medical expert, Dr. Payal Kohli. Families that are dealing with Huntington's disease know it all too well, but many people don't know much about it. So tell us a little bit. Give us a background on Huntington's disease.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. It was discovered by Dr. George Huntington in 1872. And essentially what he noticed was that generation after generation would get this constellation of symptoms: movement problems, problems with cognition, and psychiatric problems. And then, of course, later we identified that it's a genetic disorder, and it's a single gene that's problematic. It's the Huntington gene. So you make this Huntington protein misfolded. And so instead of helping the brain tissue, it starts hurting the brain tissue. It accumulates in your brain and it causes damage.
So you may know at birth, even before birth,
that's exactly
that you have
right.
it, but it may not present for decades.
So it usually presents between 30 and 50. But here's what's interesting about the disease. There's a phenomenon called genetic anticipation, which means that in every subsequent generation, it actually presents a little bit earlier than it did in the parents. And if you especially get it from dad, you're more likely to have it present even earlier because dad's, sperm has more errors when it replicates, and so it can create more errors and more mutations. So it's a bit unfortunate because if you have the disease, if you have the gene, you're going to go on to get the disease, and it's a really devastating disease.
So when you see these symptoms, do they start, obviously if you know you have the gene, you're probably more attuned to it, but what are the symptoms?
Yep, so it affects the parts of the brain that are involved in mood, in movement, and in motivation. And then eventually it affects the whole brain, but really there's a whole host of physical symptoms. So you have these involuntary movements called chorea. And chorea comes from the Greek word for dance. So they're dance-like movements. You're flinging your arms around. I remember the first patient that I saw actually had chorea movements where he almost looked possessed. He was kind of writhing around when I first saw a Huntington's patient. You can have your speech affected, your gait affected, because it can involve different muscle groups. You have cognitive problems, so you can't plan, you can't prioritize. You have sort of sexual disinhibition. And then you think a lot about death. So you have a lot of psychiatric issues.
Does it come on quickly then? Or slowly?
It depends on how many errors you have in your gene, essentially.
Oh, I see.
So how quickly it penetrates itself depends on kind of what form of the genetic condition you got. But within about 10 to 20 years, and remember it starts in your 30s, you lose the ability to walk, to talk, to take care of yourself, to be independent, to live.
So since it's genetic, you may know that it is in your family. If it is in your family, you should be, or would you automatically be tested?
Yes, this is a very personal decision. So if you know you have it, of course it can help with family planning because we can test it in utero as well, but we can't do much about it.
There's no treatment.
There's no treatment. We treat the symptoms. We can't actually treat the disease. Now there's research going on to edit your genes. Think about how we could, use CRISPR technology, which puts a typo in your gene. So if you find the bad gene, could you edit it before it manifests itself? Could you help repair those neurons that are damaged? But at this point, it's a really personal decision for you, with your doctor, with your family, to know whether or not it's going to change you psychologically to know that you have this gene.
It's such a challenge.
I'm sure that's why this awareness month, people are saying, hey, money, research, let's get somewhere.
Right. And if you have a parent with Huntington's, you have about a 50% chance of getting it because it's autosomal dominant. So kind of the one bad copy will do it. So that is certainly a reason to talk to your doctor if you have a parent or family member who's had it.
Well, thanks for bringing us up to speed on it during Huntington's Disease Awareness Month, and maybe more people now know a little bit more about it and can find out more as well. Thanks as always, Dr. Payal Kohli. There's much more with Dr. Kohli available at 9news.com/Dr. Kohli.